Warning: if you are over 60 and you have noticed your legs getting weaker, your grip not as strong as it used to be, or you find yourself needing to rest after climbing just a few stairs, then what I am about to share with you could change everything. Because there is something happening inside your body right now, silently, that most doctors never even mention during your regular checkups. Margaret, a 72-year-old retired librarian from Portland, sat in my office last month with tears in her eyes. "Dr. Harrison," she said, her voice trembling, "I used to carry stacks of books all day long. Now I cannot even open a jar of pickles without asking my grandson for help. What happened to me? What happened to Margaret is happening to millions of people over 60 right now. And the tragedy is that most of them have no idea it is even occurring, let alone that there is a simple, affordable way to stop it and even reverse it. I have been practicing medicine for over 30 years. I have seen patients walk into my office believing their weakness was just a normal part of getting older, something they had to accept, something they could not fight. And for years even I believed that some of this decline was inevitable. But then I learned something from my colleagues in Japan that completely changed how I approach this problem. Something so simple, so accessible, that when I first heard it I thought there had to be a catch. There was no catch. And in just 21 days, the patients who followed this approach started feeling stronger than they had in years. Let me tell you about Margaret and 6 other patients whose lives were transformed, because their stories might sound a lot like yours. Margaret had spent 40 years surrounded by books. She loved her work, loved the quiet satisfaction of helping people find exactly the right story. When she retired at 65, she imagined spending her golden years reading in her garden, playing with her grandchildren, maybe taking a trip to see the libraries of Europe she had always dreamed about. But something started happening around her 68th birthday. At first it was so subtle she barely noticed. Getting up from her favorite reading chair took a little more effort. The stairs to her bedroom seemed steeper somehow. She found herself avoiding the basement because climbing back up left her breathless and her legs shaking. By the time she sat in my office at 72, Margaret had stopped going to the grocery store alone. She had given away her gardening tools, and the trip to Europe. She told me with tears in her eyes, "I cannot even walk to the end of my own block anymore without feeling like I am going to collapse." What was happening to Margaret was not just aging, it was something specific, something measurable, and most importantly, something reversible. Her body was losing the very foundation that kept her strong, the very structure that allowed her to move through the world with confidence. Think of it like a house. Your muscles are like the wooden beams that hold everything up. When those beams start to weaken, when termites slowly eat away at them year after year, eventually the whole house becomes unstable. The roof sags, the walls crack, and one day something that used to be effortless, like opening a window, becomes impossible. That is exactly what was happening inside Margaret's body. The beams were weakening, and nobody had told her it was happening, let alone what she could do about it. I see this pattern over and over again in my practice. Robert, 68, a retired firefighter from Chicago, came to me because he could no longer lift his own grandchildren. This man had spent 30 years carrying people out of burning buildings, hauling equipment up flights of stairs, pushing through physical challenges that would break most people. And now picking up his 4-year-old granddaughter made his arms shake. Robert sat across from me with his jaw clenched, the way men of his generation do when they are trying not to show how much something hurts. "Doc," he said quietly, "I feel like a stranger in my own body. I do not know who this weak old man is, but it is not me." The thing that struck me about Robert, about Margaret, about so many patients I see, is that they all assumed this was just what happened when you got older. They thought weakness was the price you paid for living past 60. They had accepted it as their fate, but here is the truth that changed everything for them, and can change everything for you. This weakness is not inevitable. It is not a natural part of aging that you simply have to accept. It is the result of a specific process happening in your body, and that process can be slowed, stopped, and even reversed. Let me explain what is actually happening, because understanding this is the first step toward fixing it. Every single day, your body is doing 2 things at once. It is breaking down old, damaged tissue, and it is building new, fresh tissue to replace it. Think of it like a construction crew that works around the clock. One team demolishes old, crumbling parts of a building, while another team builds new sections to take their place. When you are young, these 2 teams work in perfect balance. The builders keep pace with the demolition crew, so the building stays strong and stable, but as you get older, something shifts. The demolition crew keeps working at the same pace, tearing down old material day after day, but the building crew starts slowing down. They take longer breaks, they work shorter hours, and gradually, the demolition outpaces the construction. That is exactly what is happening in your muscles after 60. Your body is still breaking down old muscle tissue, just like it always has, but it is not rebuilding fast enough to keep up. The result is like a savings account where you are withdrawing more than you are depositing. Eventually, the account runs dry. Dorothy, 71, a former restaurant owner from New Mexico, described it perfectly when she came to see me. "Doctor," she said, "I feel like someone is stealing from me in the middle of the night. Every morning I wake up a little weaker than the day before, and I do not know how to stop it." Dorothy had spent her whole life on her feet. Running a restaurant meant 12-hour days, constant movement, lifting heavy pots and pans, walking miles around the kitchen. When she retired at 65, she was still strong. But within 6 years she had lost so much of that strength that she could barely stand long enough to cook dinner for her husband. She tried everything she could think of. She bought one of those exercise machines from television. She started taking walks around the block. She even tried some supplements that a friend recommended. Nothing seemed to make a difference. When she told me this, I could see the frustration in her eyes. "I am not a lazy person," she said, almost defensively. "I have worked hard my whole life. Why is nothing working?" And that is when I asked her a question that changed everything. "Dorothy," I said, "tell me exactly what you ate yesterday." "Every single thing." She looked confused but went along with it. "For breakfast, I had toast with jam and some orange juice. For lunch, a salad with some crackers. For dinner, pasta with tomato sauce and a little bit of cheese." I nodded. "And that," I told her, "is exactly why nothing is working. You see, the building crew in your body, the one responsible for constructing new muscle tissue, they need raw materials to do their job. You cannot build a house without lumber and nails, and you cannot build muscle without the right fuel. The fuel your muscles need is something specific, something that most people over 60 are not getting nearly enough of. And without it, no amount of exercise, no fancy machine, no expensive supplement is going to make a real difference. Think of it like trying to bake a cake without flour. You can have the best oven in the world, the most beautiful cake pan, the most detailed recipe, but if you do not have flour, you are not making a cake, period." Dorothy's body was trying to rebuild her muscles every single day. The construction crew showed up, ready to work, but when they looked around for building materials, the shelves were empty, so they packed up and went home, and the demolition crew kept right on working. This is the mistake I see over and over again. People focus on exercise, on movement, on activity, and those things are important, but they are like having a construction crew without any lumber. All the workers in the world cannot build anything if you do not give them materials to work with. So what are these building materials? What does your body actually need to rebuild muscle? The answer is simpler than you might think, and more affordable than you have probably been led to believe. About 3 years ago, I attended a medical conference where a Japanese physician presented research that had been quietly transforming how doctors in Japan approach this problem. His name was Dr. Tanaka, and he had spent 20 years studying why some people maintained their strength well into their 80s and 90s, while others became frail in their 60s. What he found was remarkable. The people who stayed strong were not doing anything exotic. They were not taking expensive supplements or following complicated exercise programs. They were simply giving their bodies the raw materials needed to rebuild muscle consistently every single day. And here is the part that surprised me most. The foods that worked best were not expensive steaks or fancy health foods. They were simple, affordable sources of exactly what the body needs to construct new muscle tissue. Dr. Tanaka called it the rebuilding principle. Give your body the right building blocks in the right amounts, and it will do what it was designed to do. It will rebuild. When I returned from that conference, I was skeptical. After 30 years in medicine, you learn to be cautious about anything that sounds too good to be true. So I decided to try it with a few patients, starting with the ones who had tried everything else and seen no results. Harold was 74, a retired postal worker from Ohio who had been carrying mail through every kind of weather for 35 years. When he retired, his legs were like tree trunks, solid and strong from decades of walking. But by the time he came to me, those tree trunks had withered into twigs. "I cannot trust my legs anymore," Harold told me during our first appointment. "I feel like they might give out at any moment. And the worst part is, I used to be strong. I know what it feels like to be strong, and this is not it." I explained the rebuilding principle to Harold and gave him a simple plan. 7 specific foods, all of them cheap and available at any grocery store, that would give his body the building blocks it needed. Harold was skeptical too. "Doc, I have tried protein shakes. I have tried those meal replacement things. I have tried eating more chicken. Nothing works. I told him what I am about to tell you. It is not just about eating more of these building blocks. It is about eating the right ones, in the right amounts, at the right times. And the 7 foods I am going to share with you are the most efficient, most affordable, most effective ones I have found. Harold agreed to try it for 3 weeks. Just 21 days, I told him. If you do not feel any different, you can go back to whatever you were doing before. When Harold came back after 21 days, I barely recognized him. Not because he looked different on the outside, but because he walked differently. He stood differently. He carried himself like a man who trusted his own body again. Dr. Harrison, he said, grabbing my hand with a grip that actually surprised me, I climbed the stairs to my bedroom last night without holding the railing. I have not done that in 3 years. Now let me tell you about these 7 foods and why they work so well. The first one might surprise you because most people think of it as breakfast food. Eggs, simple, ordinary eggs that cost pennies each. But inside that shell is one of the most perfect building blocks nature has ever created. Think of an egg as a complete construction kit. It contains everything needed to build an entire living creature from scratch. When you eat an egg, you are giving your body a pre-packaged set of building materials that are almost perfectly suited for muscle construction. Your body does not have to work hard to break them down or convert them into usable form. They are ready to use, like pre-cut lumber that fits together perfectly. Margaret started eating 3 eggs every morning. She was nervous at first because she had heard for years that eggs were bad for her heart, but I explained that this old belief has been thoroughly disproven by modern research. Eggs are not your enemy. They are one of the best friends your muscles could have. Within 2 weeks, Margaret noticed something strange. The jar of pickles that had defeated her for months opened without a fight. She called her daughter that night, crying, but this time they were tears of joy. The second food is canned fish. Sardines, mackerel, salmon, whatever you prefer. These little cans that cost just a couple of dollars contain some of the highest quality building materials available anywhere. Robert, the retired firefighter, was not thrilled when I told him this. I have never liked fish, he admitted. The smell bothers me. I told him to try sardines on crackers with a little bit of mustard. Something about that combination makes them more approachable, even for people who think they do not like fish. He agreed to try it as an afternoon snack. 3 weeks later, Robert's granddaughter ran up to him at a family gathering and raised her arms, the universal signal for "pick me up, Grandpa." Robert hesitated for just a moment, remembering all the times he had had to disappoint her. Then he bent down, wrapped his arms around her, and lifted her into the air like she weighed nothing. His daughter, watching from across the room, burst into tears. She told me later that she had not seen her father lift anything in over a year. She had started to accept that the strong man who had carried her when she was small was gone forever, and suddenly, there he was again. The third food is cottage cheese. I know it does not sound exciting, but this humble dairy product is like a time-release construction kit. While eggs give your bodybuilding materials that get used quickly, cottage cheese provides a slow, steady supply that keeps the construction crew working for hours. Dorothy started having a small bowl of cottage cheese before bed. This meant her body had building materials available all night long, during the hours when the most rebuilding naturally occurs. Think of it like running the night shift at a construction site. Instead of the workers sitting idle because there is nothing to build with, they stay busy all night, making progress while you sleep. After 3 weeks, Dorothy cooked Thanksgiving dinner for her entire family. She was on her feet for 6 hours, just like the old days. When she sat down at the head of the table, her husband reached over and squeezed her hand. "Welcome back," he whispered. "I missed you." The fourth food is Greek yogurt. It is thicker and more concentrated than regular yogurt, packed with the building blocks your muscles crave. And it comes with beneficial bacteria that help your body absorb nutrients more efficiently. Think of these bacteria as a cleanup crew that works alongside the construction team. They make sure the building materials actually get to where they need to go, instead of passing through unused. It is not enough to just eat the right foods. Your body has to be able to use them. Greek yogurt helps make that happen. Helen, 69, a retired nurse from Michigan, had been struggling with weakness for years. She had tried so many different approaches that she had almost given up. When I added Greek yogurt to her morning routine, she noticed something unexpected within the first week. Her digestion improved dramatically. This matters because better digestion means better absorption, which means more building materials, actually reaching your muscles instead of just passing through. After 21 days, Helen called me from a hiking trail. "Dr. Harrison," she said, slightly out of breath but clearly happy, "I am walking up a mountain right now. I have not done anything like this in 5 years. The fifth food is chicken." Thighs. Now I know many people think of chicken breast as the healthy choice, but here is something most people do not know. Chicken thighs contain a type of building material that is especially important for maintaining the connective tissue that holds your muscles together. Think of muscles like a fabric. The building blocks are the individual threads, but you also need something to hold those threads together into a strong, flexible weave. Chicken thighs provide both the threads and the binding material. Walter, 76, a former carpenter from Pennsylvania, was having trouble with his shoulders. He had spent 50 years swinging hammers and lifting heavy boards, and now he could barely raise his arms above his head. I had him replace his usual chicken breast with thighs, cooked simply in a pan with some olive oil and herbs. The extra nutrients from the thighs, combined with the building materials, started repairing not just his muscles, but the framework that connected them. Within 3 weeks, Walter was able to reach the top shelf of his kitchen cabinet for the first time in 2 years. He called me, laughing. "Doc, I got my own coffee mug down this morning. You have no idea how good that felt." The sixth food is lentils. These little legumes are incredibly cheap and incredibly powerful. A 1-pound bag costs less than $2 and contains enough building materials for multiple meals. I recommend lentils especially for people who cannot afford to eat meat at every meal, which is most people on a fixed income. Lentils give you substantial building materials along with fiber that helps everything work properly. George, 73, was living on a tight budget after his wife passed away. He had been eating mostly bread and canned soup because it was cheap. His muscles had wasted away until he struggled to walk to his mailbox. I taught him how to make a simple lentil soup that cost about 50 cents per serving. He ate it for lunch every day. The building materials started reaching his muscles consistently, and the construction crew finally had what they needed. In just 3 weeks, George walked to the corner store for the first time in 8 months. He bought a newspaper and sat on the bench outside, reading in the sunshine. He told me that morning felt like a miracle. The seventh food is something you might have in your refrigerator right now. It is milk, plain, ordinary milk, that costs a few dollars per gallon. Milk is like a liquid construction supply truck. It delivers building materials along with the calcium your bones need to support your muscles properly. You cannot have strong muscles attached to weak bones, just like you cannot hang heavy pictures on crumbling walls. I recommend a glass with breakfast and a glass with dinner. This steady supply keeps your body in building mode throughout the day. Now here is what makes this approach so powerful. It is not about any single one of these foods. It is about giving your body a consistent, reliable supply of building materials throughout every single day. Remember the construction crew analogy. If building materials show up once a week, the crew cannot build much. They sit around waiting, and meanwhile the demolition team keeps working. But if materials arrive consistently, morning, noon, and night, the construction crew can finally keep pace with the demolition. The balance tips back in your favor. This is what happened to all 7 of my patients. They started feeding their bodies the raw materials needed for construction, and their bodies responded by doing what they were designed to do. They rebuilt. Margaret is 72 now, and she walks to the library 3 times a week. She carries armfuls of books, and she is planning that trip to Europe for next spring. Robert picks up both his grandchildren at once, one under each arm, while they giggle and squirm. Dorothy just catered her granddaughter's birthday party, on her feet for 8 hours, and she told me her legs felt fine the next morning. Harold walks 2 miles every day, rain or shine, just like his mail carrier days. Helen is training for a charity walk next month. She will be 70 by then. Walter is building a treehouse for his great-grandchildren, by himself. George walks to the corner store every single day. Now, not because he needs anything, but because he can. What I want you to understand is that this is not magic. This is biology. Your body knows how to build muscle. It has been doing it your whole life. But it cannot build without materials, any more than a carpenter can build without wood. For years, maybe decades, you have been running on empty. The demolition crew has been working while the construction crew sat idle. And the result is the weakness, the fatigue, the frustration that brought you here today. But starting right now, today, this very moment, you can change that. You can give your body what it needs. You can tip the balance back in your favor. You can rebuild. Start with what is easiest for you. Maybe that is eggs in the morning. Maybe that is a can of sardines for a snack. Maybe it is lentil soup for lunch, or a glass of milk with dinner. The key is consistency. Every single day, your body is either building or breaking down. Every single day, you are either getting stronger or getting weaker. There is no neutral. There is no standing still. But here is the beautiful thing. The same system that has been working against you can work for you. Once you start providing building materials consistently, Your body does not just stop declining, it starts improving. The construction crew does not just catch up to the demolition team. Given enough materials, they can actually get ahead. Imagine waking up 3 weeks from now and feeling different. Imagine getting out of bed and noticing that your legs feel more solid under you. Imagine climbing stairs without pausing halfway up. Imagine opening jars without a struggle, lifting grocery bags without worry, playing with grandchildren without fear. This is not fantasy. This is what happened to Margaret, to Robert, to Dorothy, to Harold, to Helen, to Walter, to George. Real people with real problems who made a simple change and saw real results. The Japanese have a saying that translates roughly as the body remembers strength. What this means is that your muscles have not forgotten how to be strong. They are just waiting for the materials they need to rebuild. Margaret called me last week from her garden. She was planting tulip bulbs for spring, kneeling in the dirt, digging with her hands, doing work that would have been impossible just 3 months ago. "Dr. Harrison," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, "I feel like myself again. No, I feel better than myself. I feel like the person I was always meant to be, the person I lost somewhere along the way." And I found her in the most unlikely place, not in a gym, not in a bottle of pills, in my refrigerator. And that is exactly where you can find your strength too, not in expensive treatments or complicated programs, in simple, affordable foods that have been available all along. 7 humble sources of the building blocks your body has been desperately waiting for. The construction crew is ready, the plans are drawn up, the site is prepared. All that has been missing is the materials. Starting today, you can deliver those materials. Starting today, you can begin rebuilding. And in just 21 days, you might just find yourself doing something you thought was impossible. Something as simple as climbing stairs without the railing, or opening a stubborn jar, or picking up a grandchild. Something that feels an awful lot like getting your life back. If you know someone over 60 who has been struggling with weakness, who has been told this is just normal aging, who has accepted decline as their fate, share this with them, because sometimes the most powerful gift we can give someone is hope. Hope backed by real science, real results, and real people whose lives have been changed. Margaret asked me to tell you something. She said, "Tell them it is not too late. Tell them I thought I was finished, and I was wrong. Tell them that the body they remember, the strong one, the capable one, it is still in there. It is just waiting for a chance to come back. I have told you. Now it is your turn to believe it."